This guy has done so much good work. We look up to him, independent thinker, independent media champion all around. Please welcome back to the show, Don DeBar.
Yeah.
You're embarrassing me.
And he makes great meatballs and serves them with Chianti, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just put that out there, too.
How you guys doing?
Very good.
Good,
Very
man.
good, Don.
I'm listening to you talk about this facial recognition and the passports and stuff, and I started raging all of a sudden because I had an image in my face of this friggin' cop in Miami at the airport that took a bottle of Havana Club away from us and poured it out in front of us.
Oh, my God.
Son of a bitch. Anyway.
I got to check a bag because I can't bring my cream through TSA. They'll take it away from me, you know? And with a kid with eczema, cream is very valuable.
Yeah, man, you need that. Otherwise, you'd be scratching like I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Like we always do.
So what are we going to talk about?
Well, let's start with this. There's so much going on, so many moving parts. We had the tariff war. We got the tariff war going on. China, Trump. We were covering earlier in the show about China exposing the luxury product scam, which was pretty funny. And to see that people waking up every time we have you get on your phone, your devices, they can't stop people from getting on and checking for themselves. So the mainstream media has to continually double down, triple down on all of their spins and keeping their narrative going that China's the bad guy, communism's coming for you. It seems that they're circling back to an oldie but a goodie, back to the Vietnam language. So we saw this today, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Don. So we saw that the China's president has now inked Vietnam deals as the tariff war deepens. Trump says they're trying to screw us. And then we have this shot of them meeting together. So not only a red carpet welcome for Xi Jinping, but the president of Vietnam was there at the airport to receive him. The Vietnamese have understood that the U.S. is too capricious. Stability is pivotal for long-term planning in geopolitics and economy. And I'm going to play this little clip because this is the messaging from the Trump team on Fox News. And then we get your thoughts from a more stable point of view. So here's the unstable Fox News giving us the fear language. It's coming. Vietnam's coming for you. Here we go. This is the trade advisor, Pete Navarro. He's going to tell us what to be afraid of next. Here we go.
Vietnam is essentially a colony of communist China. China uses Vietnam to transship to evade the tariffs. How does that work? Vietnam sells us $15 for every $1 we sell them. And about $5 of that is just Chinese product that comes into Vietnam. They slap a Made in Vietnam label on it, and they send us here to evade the tariffs. But Vietnam is also the biggest dumper and biggest use of export subsidies. I don't know if you saw the clip of that beautiful Louisiana shrimp guy saying, hey, God bless Donald Trump for protecting us. You know who he was protecting him from? Vietnam. And we know that Vietnam dumps stuff. They do export subsidies because at the Department of Commerce, that's the one that slaps on the anti-dumping countervailing duties. So they do that. And then they have the VAT tax. They have a 10% VAT tax. They use some of those phony standards. And the sum and substance of all of this, Jackie, it's like every country around the world cheats us. But it's like fingerprints. They all do it in different ways. But it all comes down to the non-tariff cheating. It was interesting to hear Elon Musk at the beginning talk about a zero tariff zone with Europe. He doesn't understand that. And the thing that's, I think, important about Elon to understand, he sells cars. That's what he does. And if you look, for example, at the Tesla factories in Texas, they're assembly plants, and they get a lot of their content from China, Mexico, Japan, and Taiwan and elsewhere. What President Trump wants to do is turn Detroit back into Detroit instead of having Detroit in Mexico now like they have it.
So, and I'm going to pause there.
Wow.
I think, I mean, it's very hard to listen to this. I'm sure it is for you too, Don. What is this guy up to? This is the spin, right? This is the let's get everybody afraid of China, and now let's throw Vietnam in there as well.
I mean, there's so many. I don't even know where to start. First of all, let's start in Louisiana. What he doesn't mention when he's talking about shrimp and Louisiana and protecting from Vietnam is that a huge number of the shrimpers in Louisiana are Vietnamese. after the war. It was one of the primary places that people relocated from, the U.S. backed South Vietnam to the United States. And they fell into the shrimping business with like both feet and a couple of hands. So he leaves that out when he's talking about the role of Vietnam and shrimpers in Louisiana and all of this. The opinion of the people there, you're talking about the analog of the Cubans in Miami. You ask the Cubans in Miami, maybe not as much now as 20 years ago, what do you think of Cuba and what the Cuban government's doing right now? And, the first thing out of their mouth would be those Castro brothers ruined Cuba and we should kill them and blah, 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 blah. There are lots of folks in Louisiana shrimping that feel that way about Vietnam. So if you're some knucklehead like Peter Navarro talking to them, if you don't understand that context, you're not going to understand. You might be getting a bias from there. That's just that little piece of it. Now, I've always been amazed at the fact that the United States has done a tremendous amount of trading with Vietnam after we bombed the shit out of it and poisoned it and murdered 1 million plus people there over a period of 20 or 30 years, not counting the involvement of the U.S. with the French since 1954 or thereabouts. It is natural that China and Vietnam will have normal relations. There have been historical, contradictions, but in general, they're neighbors, and this is what would happen. By the way, Xi Jinping was in Cambodia yesterday and today or something, doing the same thing. People will complain here about that. Like, number one, how dare Xi Jinping do that, and how dare Cambodia host it? What was the last thing we did to Cambodia? It was to bomb the shit out of Cambodia. Yeah. I remember Richard Nixon did that, and people, as a matter of fact, people got killed May 4th and May 7th or 14th, I forget, between Kent State and Jackson State.
Yeah, that's right.
Protesting that thing that happened in 1970. The government that was installed in Cambodia pretty much at the in the aftermath of the U.S. bombing, murdered millions of Cambodians. And if you want to go interview more people, Mr. Navarro, go out to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and interview Cambodians who were there, who also ran out of Cambodia after the United States blew that up. I think I'm focused on that too much. The entire coverage of what's going on between Trump with the announcements and the media coverage around this and the role of tariffs and economies and tariff wars and all this other bullshit. I think you nailed it, Matt, when you said in essence that these guys every day have to have some new stuff, or every 20 minutes, for people to pop in and see on their cell phones. That there's got to be like a constant regurgitation of news headlines and sensational things to happen in order to draw audience. And there's a lot of that going on. The problem, first of all, in dealing with this stuff is that the institutional activity that goes on in the background and just in terms of daily business for international trade and the international politics is so large and larger than it's ever been in history, that and also much of it so new that even if there were an honest attempt to keep the education level of the average person on par where they can not just understand in vague terms what these things mean, like tariff and inflation and whatever else, but actually have some understanding of the operations of this giant machine, that it would be difficult or impossible to do if you were really trying. And of course, what's been happening since at least the mid 60s or late 60s is that those people who were doing any kind of, I would say, engineering, using education, have been using it to dumb down the population, to focus them on tasks that have to do with manufacturing or support for industrial activity, rather than to understand systems operation, do critical thinking, have a good command of history, good command of economics, a good command of commerce, et cetera. So you have a large audience that's tuning into these programs that really doesn't know shit about any of the subject matter. And you're lying to them because there's a handful of people that own all of these outlets that are generating this stuff. And I want to talk about something in a minute about that, by the way. So that own a heavy piece of the actual machinery, and the role of the media is not to inform people about what's happening and how to do it, but rather to manipulate them so that they behave in a way that suits the owners of the machinery in their interactions with it, whether it's as employees or stockholders or customers or whatever. And so the media beats up on Trump all the time. Who knows whether that's a real thing or staged or when it's which. Certainly, there has not been a revolution in the United States. The ownership of the means of production hasn't changed hands whatsoever. The stock prices that they talk about being depressed, suppressed, lifted, inflated, whatever. They may affect millions and millions of people whose pensions and other, holdings are, through institutional investment houses, like Fidelity or Merrill Lynch or whatever. But they're not within the control of more than a handful of people. Whatever I'm getting out of my pension, for example, I might be able to trade or to command Fidelity to trade this kind of share for that kind of share within a small set. But I don't have a seat on the exchange, and I don't trade millions of shares, and I don't have a group of people doing that in the way that I would say the bulk of the shares that are traded in the indices that we hear about in Dow, S&P, whatever. A small group of people are involved in the machinations of that. That's my point. And so when they say Trump said this and that made the market do that, you're as likely looking at a manipulation intended to deal with some political struggle that's going on outside of our view, or we're seeing a caricature of it, than as being portrayed. So with all of that, I'm looking at what's happening right now. I know that we're still not at war with Russia, and I'm glad about that. And I think that if they had elected Harris for some reason, by some method, whether it was, well, they'll let us go to war or whatever.
You're still holding on to that, Goomba? Get out of here.
I'm not holding on to anything. I think that's true.
Come on. We're at war with Russia, though. All right, go ahead.
No.
Let me. Yeah, go ahead. I hear what you're saying. I don't mean to step on it, but I disagree over there with that.
But okay, noted. Okay. In today, as a matter of fact, Moscow issued a statement. Maria Zakharova and someone else too. Germany is talking about, and Ukraine is talking about using some particular weapon system that comes from Germany to Ukraine, and they're going to be targeting Russia with it. And so Russia announced today, the first time you strike us with that, we're going to consider that an attack on us by Germany. The rhetoric, to the extent that matters, that's been coming from Russia in terms of defining what's going on, and also the description of the history of the struggle there that comes out of some parts of Washington, including out of the White House, is different. And I don't know that would have happened in any event, for what that's worth. The fallout from this economic, it appears to me, and this is going back even to 2014, 2015, 2016, that there's some kind of a reconfiguration of the global economy that some sector would like to see that would correspond more to almost George Orwell's Three Sheaves, with the U.S. more or less taking unequivocal control of the Western Hemisphere, and the EU taking, in essence, its space there and whatever it can maintain in Africa, and Asia, China basically dominating Asia, however that plays out, with Russia and Europe to settle whatever business they have, and the front between those two being in constant tension. This would be a different map. It seems like it is a different map that's being developed already from the one that has been, the result of the post-war order, what we currently call globalism, where and more so than the way it appeared maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when it seemed that Russia was being, in the former Soviet spaces, were being absorbed into the Western economy when they were in the G20 and all of that. I'm looking at what Trump has been doing in terms of trying to the extent that it's happening, contested, if you like, to deconflict with Russia and to focus more on the Western Hemisphere, as basically reflecting the desire of whoever it is that's pulling the strings to secure the Western Hemisphere if they go back to trying to dominate the globe, before they try to do it. It seems that a number of things, if the goal has always been, and it seems to have been, to dominate the planet, that the rise of the BRICS, of China, the contradictions in the Western Hemisphere and in Africa, and somewhat in Asia, that sort of thwarted their attempt to, steamroll or to be in control of it now. That the opposition to that has risen. I would say certainly since 2014, maybe even since the year like 2000. And so that in order to achieve this long-term goal, some sector of the elite believes that they have to sort of regroup, secure themselves here, let the others slug it out, and do like they did with World War II and go in and pick up the pieces. That's what it seems to me is motivating. And I don't know any more than anyone else if that's what it actually is. But if something is motivating a change of course, not in terms of we want to own everything and make you all shut up and do what you're told, but the methodology and maybe the sequencing. And I think that's what Trump represents. And in the short term, it appeared that this group was willing to have an actual shooting war with Russia, gambling that it wouldn't grow into a nuclear exchange or a final nuclear exchange. But that, I think that maybe that we've turned away from that possibility in the short term. And I think that's very important.
Can I jump in, my friend?
Yeah, go for it.
Let me, for my last comment before I got to get going. Don, it's great to see you again. Love hanging out and whatnot. We very rarely disagree. And I think we have a little bit of a disagreement here because I see it completely different. And
go ahead.
I just, this whole peace through strength that he's been echoing that I think was made famous from the Gipper, right? I think Ronald Reagan was one who made that comment or that phrase, very popular. It was around before him, but he used it himself, right? And it's like, why walk lightly, but carry a heavy stick, but make sure they see that stick. It's supposed to meant deterrence, but it really leads to more military spending and buildups. And actually, I think it kind of sidelines if, in fact, it sacks any type of what's the word I'm looking for? Diplomacy, right? Whatsoever. I think that's what happens. You start giving the generals a little bit more power, a little umph, and they want to use it. And I don't think he was ever serious about. I don't know if he was ever serious, but it definitely backfired him and the people he is choosing. I mean, it's like Memento, like when he chose Lord John Bolton last time and Elliot Abrams in Latin America to run a lot of the policies over there. These are known warmongers, and he's got these bobbleheads that just say yes, Peter Hegseth and Marco Rubio, Larry Johnson used that term, and I've been using it ever since I heard that. That just they're neocons to the nth degree. If he was ever serious about ending this war in the Ukraine, you don't send Commander Clark Kellogg, right? Is that his name? To go and negotiate for you. The guy is a neocon that's anti-Russia as can be. He spews lies all the time. And what I've seen, the moves that have happened, especially since day two when he brought in Sam Altman and Larry Ellison, these guys, these technocrats, these Starlink, Starbright, whatever, programs they have. It's to accelerate into a different type of warfare and a different type of control. That's why we see these digital passports coming in. You don't need these NGOs on the ground doing all the work. Everything is modernized and everything is done technocratically. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's to be brought along. We heard Donald Trump say he would end this war within 24 hours. Now, I know a lot of us thought, you haven't been paying attention if you're really going to believe that you're going to end this war in 24 hours. You might ingest some form of diplomacy and some relationships. The fact that the Biden administration wouldn't even sit down and talk, the Trump administration would, but they can end this war with a phone call. Within 2 weeks, it would be over if he just stopped the funding. And I understand that it was close to $200 billion. I think it was $170 billion that Biden had forked over in weapons and aid to Ukraine. But Donald Trump is still given in the last 4 months, not even 4 months of his presidency, an additional $1 billion. So there's no end in sight whatsoever. I think a lot of the RT people and the Sputnik people are still waiting for these sanctions to be lifted. They thought they'd be lifted by now, especially when Donald Trump got in here. But the important thing, what I see, Don, is I don't see the behavior changing. I still see the U.S. using the same behavior. As to the segment that Matt just brought into play here when it comes to China, it's still more the same. They want to use sanctions, and in this case, Donald Trump used tariffs like sanctions to bully and to push people into doing what they want to do, and they're just not going to play along with it anymore. I think when he starts talking, you hear this guy, Navarro, go on Fox News, and he starts speaking about this is what Vietnam does, and they throw this up here and these tariffs, whatnot, and everything. Well, who's paying the tariffs? It's 99.9% of the time stuff that's made in Vietnam and China, whatnot, are not bought by the American consumer directly from China. They're bought from another company that's here in the United States that's taking advantage of that labor. And as what we're seeing on TikTok and Instagram, I think the Burger Bag one is a big one, Matt. I don't know if you played it the other day. The markup from these people, right? The markup from the companies, the United States. And all China has to do is just turn a mirror on itself. It doesn't have to push back and fight with tariffs. It's just showing you what the capitalists in America are doing to its own citizens. So I really don't see anything different. And I went to a Viet MAGA event here, Vietnamese in Florida, with Kim Iverson. She took me to it, of these people supporting Donald Trump in the United States. And it's a quagmire to me in my mind after we bombed the hell out of it. And by the way, there are still mines that are going off in Cambodia to this day that were put there by the West. To this
Vietnam
day,
too.
they're still going out. Little kids walking in a field, and boom, a mine goes off that was put down in the 70s. So, I mean, the problem we see with the United States is that the relationship hasn't changed. The behavior, of the United States hasn't changed whatsoever. And for anybody thinking that this guy is and I'm not saying that you said this, Don, but other people and supporters have said that this president is a president of peace. I mean, holy cow, what's going on in Yemen? I mean, him bragging on a tweet about blowing up a tribal circle of a bunch of Houthis and people in Yemen. I don't see anything changing. I see his attitude towards Latin America escalating. And look what he's saying about Venezuela. If you do business with them, we'll punish you. It's still more of the same. I just see us moving in a modernization of a technocrats coming in, and everything's just getting arranged. It's just smoke and mirrors. And I think that this Ukraine situation might turn out to be Donald Trump's Vietnam. He's already starting to go back and starting to complain. What happened to I'll end it in 24 hours? That's out the window. But now he's starting to echo those words. And this is why so many Republicans were against the war, is because it was Biden's wars. It's Biden's war, Ukraine. It could be used as a political weapon against the Democrats. And that's why they were against that war. But they're not against war. They're for war. They'll go along with any war he's got. And like I said, The behavior just hasn't changed, Don, whatsoever. So I don't see anything changing. I see this as a continuation. And this was meant to be Trump, Biden, Trump.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
So,
I got to get out of here in 5 minutes. So.
I don't disagree with most of what you said. And actually, although you might think that you do, you're not disagreeing with most of what I said, because the primary point I tried to make is that we have not had a strategic change. We've had a tactical change. And that's what you're describing. But the tactical change here, one of the tactics that it seems they were willing to use before that they don't feel secure enough to do now, is an all-out war with Russia. And to me, I mean, look, we're talking about a binary election, we're talking about a politics that is binary, period. You got two people, one of whom is going to be elected. There's 1,000 issues that matter. This guy, let's say there's just 2 issues. One, we're going to have a nuclear war, and the other, we're going to keep or do away with Social Security. Have a nuclear war or not, do away with Social Security or not. And I'll tell people right now, I live on Social Security. Among other things, I'm 71 years old. So you got 2 candidates. If one guy says, I'm going to not have a nuclear war, but I'm going to do away with Social Security, and the other one says, I'm going to have a nuclear war, but I'm going to continue Social Security, which one do you vote for? Is it a choice at all?
No, I get that.
Well,
but I'm saying it was meant to look that way.
I don't think it was.
It was meant to look like Donald Trump would at very least keep us out of war with Russia.
Well, no. Look, the Russians were telling us that we're getting closer and closer to a nuclear war. They're telling us that we're closer to nuclear war with them than ever since October of '62, and perhaps more so now. That's what they were telling us. And it's objectively speaking, unless, look, I said this a million times every time we talk, practically, Pasta, that everything that we think we know comes to us virtually, about all of this shit. I'm not on the front lines in Ukraine. I'm not in the back room in D.C. I'm not at the Pentagon, and I'm not in Moscow and all these places, in the places where these decisions are made. And I don't go home at night with the people who are in those rooms to see what their lives are really like. But it appears that, so in other words, I don't know if this is a shit show. The whole thing is a shit show. It appears that there was actually a war with Russia that Russia doesn't want to have at its doorstep, and that we brought it there. Okay, I think that much is real. It might not be. If it's not, if the whole thing is a shit show and Putin is helping Biden and Trump to screw us, that is possible. That's not what you're suggesting, right? That level of
I'm saying that could be a possibility. I don't know, but Putin also did say he'd rather have Biden as president than Trump.
Well, because the whole media for 8 years or whatever was telling people that Trump is Putin's puppet and that Putin's evil. So if Putin says, I want Biden, the assumption would be he's really trying to tell people, vote for Trump, because now I like Biden. I don't know what any of that shit means. I saw that. But what I'm saying is there's real shooting going on. We did send the $100 billion, 9 figures, however figures of billions of dollars of money to, 12 figures. Anyway, hundreds of billions of dollars there that disappeared. Who knows what the hell they bought with it. There's thousands of people being killed on the ground. There's all these claims about soldiers being killed. And, when we were in Russia in March, a week or so on either side of it, there was a friggin' drone attack on the Kremlin.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, these things are very dangerous in a world where you have the rhetoric that's been targeting Russia from here for a dozen years now or better, and the mobilization of forces all surrounding Russia and China that's been going on since Obama, certainly, and sitting on the other side of that, if really there is antipathy or antagonism or contradiction between Russia and the West, defending or knowing what's coming in when. I mean, they were at a hair trigger. They were all upset back in 1962 because the missiles in Cuba could hit the Washington, D.C. in like 12 minutes or whatever the hell it was. You know, those rickety ass rockets that are practically you pump the water into and they shoot off the top of the toy. Okay, what they have now surrounding and the Soviets we had the missiles in Turkey.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah,
we've got stuff now in Poland and Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Korea, and every goddamn place else. Cruise missiles that make those look like a joke, and that's just what we've announced. I mean, if we also have those hypersonic. And when I was in Moscow in 1990, they pointed to the building where the leadership, was at the top of the 30 stories, 50 stories, whatever it was, and said it takes 18 minutes to go from there to the hardened basement where those guys are safe against a nuclear attack. From the time they say go, 18 minutes before this closes the door. It takes 12 minutes for a cruise missile to launch from Germany and land here. That's 35 years ago, a siege mentality. Mm-hmm. What are they thinking now? So to me, the possibility of a nuclear war is real as long as it looks like it's real to the Russians. And if they don't see what we see, then I don't know what they're looking at. So I don't think it was illusion. And I think if that has backed off, and if they feel that it's backed off, I don't know what else primes that.
Like I said, I would still question too, as well, why Putin said he would rather have, Biden. And I understand he would say that because of the whole the Russiagate thing. It's really sad because they're reenacting that again. Rahm Emanuel was on Bill Maher a couple weeks ago and just saying, Putin this, Putin that. It's like the same old playbook. But listen, if it takes 18 minutes to get in the cellar and only 12 minutes for the missile can get there, go halfway down and then just duck and cover. That's what you got to do. I got to go, guys. I love you, Don. It's so great to see you. Matt, thank you for having me on 100 episodes. You guys have fun. And I'm sure we'll see each other in the very near future. Love you guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.